Hey, Pokedad fan club, it's Pokedad, and today I'm doing Wednesday words. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. This is going to be more of an advanced topic, so if you're a beginner, this may not make as much sense to you, but it still would be good for you to listen to so that you can begin to understand some of the competitive ideas. I want to talk about with the new rotation. It just happened. It's actually only been out a week now. We're in the new rotation, so it's XY base set to Ancient Origins. And I just want to talk about some of the meta decks, the competitive decks that you can see. We're going to go over quite a few here, but these are the ones that I think will be the most competitive. Some of them may even be a shock to you, and they are more of my personal opinion. So I may totally have it off, but these are ones I think you can play and be successful. Okay, and we'll talk about which decks perform well against other decks. So we're going to kind of go through a big jumbled mess and hope you can understand it all. Alright, now, before we start talking about standard, though, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, why are you talking standard? Regionals is the next big event that's coming up, and Pokemon has announced that it's going to be completely expanded format. And so I know a lot of people aren't even considering standard. I know a lot of league challenges aren't even doing standard. They're doing expanded format. And it's kind of disappointing because for newer players that don't have all the old cards, it's kind of unfair to them, I think. Again, that's just my 2 cents. So before I get started on the standard decks, let me talk about a couple decks that I think will do pretty well in expanded format. The first one, probably the least major one, but one that I think will still do well in expanded, is the World Championship deck. Archie's Blastoise. I think it can still match up quite well. Now, grass is getting more prevalent, so I think that if you're going to have water attackers, you may want to at least add more non-grass weak water attackers, make them more the metal weak. So like Articuno, Regice, those kind of attackers will do well in the Archie's Blastoise. Of course, you're still going to have to use Keldeo, but it should still compete and should still do well. Now, there is a larger card pool there, so there's a lot more you have to account for, but I think it's one of those decks that could still do well. Another one that I think is going to be big in both standard, and we'll talk about it more in standard in a minute, but also in expanded, is I think Manectric variants, Manectric backs. I've even seen a Manectric Genesect deck, which is quite intriguing because instead of having Virizion Genesect, you play Manectric Genesect, and that allows you still to charge up the Genesect really fast, but it gives you a different type attacker, and one that hits pretty hard, actually, in comparison to Virizion anyway. So I think Manectric variants are going to be really strong. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I know Excelgor is going to be pretty big, so that one will still be in there. I think even though they banned Dark Shiftry, I still think you're going to see Latios Fortress Donk decks, which basically again tries to go through your whole deck in one turn, and they play a Latios and a Muscle Band to hit for 60. In the meantime, they keep using Fortress and Devolution Spray to keep adding 10 damage over and over and over and over. And I have actually seen someone who started out with like I think it was just an Eviltal EX and like another Pokemon, and the Fortress was able to take out the small Pokemon, and then Latios was able to finish off the Eviltal EX with the additional 60 damage. and won on turn 1 before the Evil Tall deck even got a chance to play. So I don't know how successful that deck will be, but I do think people will play it just as an annoyance. And it's still pretty strong because you get to basically play your whole deck on turn 1. Your opponent doesn't get to play anything, and either they're going to beat you or they're not. So if you like to play Solitaire, that's a good deck to go with. The one I think that's going to be kind of broken, and I'm surprised they haven't banned it in some way yet, and that is Executor Vileplume. I mean, to be able to shut off items and shut off your opponent's supporters, it just really is, it's nasty. I mean, you can't do anything except play basic energy and, play energy and Pokemon, and that's it. Stadiums. And we all know how important supporters are. So I think that's going to be the one deck that's probably going to probably be top. Having said that, okay, so let's get into standard though, because that's what I really want to share with you. I've got a league challenge coming up myself. I've actually heard a lot of good reports. Some of you have taken my deck ideas and tweaked them to your own personality and to your own deck lists, and have done very well. And I love to hear that, guys. I love to hear the feedback when you've done that. It just really makes me feel like this is worth spending my time, because you guys are taking my advice, and by all means tweak it to your personality and to what fits in your deck best. But I love to hear that. So without further ado, let's start talking about the decks. Now I've got a lot here to go over, so please bear with me, but I think this will be very good information for you. So I want to start off with grass, because I think grass decks are probably the new in. It's like the hot deck, and specifically Vespiquen. Vespiquen is one of the major decks. In fact, I've got to be honest with you, my league challenge is probably going to be a Vespiquen variant. I've just practiced with it. I love it so much. However, one thing I want to caution you about Vespiquen is playing Vespiquen by itself. If you have too many Combees prized and you just can't get to them, your game can be done very quickly. So one thing to think about with Vespiquen is combine it with something else. Now let me give you two alternatives. I'll give you the deck that I'm playing. I've already talked about it a little bit, but it is Raichu. Vespiquen Raichu. Matter of fact, you start with Raichu as the main attacker, and then after all the cards, after you've lost some Raichus and you've discarded other cards like Unknowns, because the Skyfield had to get taken out and Shaman's go into the discard pile, then Vespiquen becomes much, much stronger and can finish the game. Now, one thing I should point out with Vespiquen is that, and Raichu, and any stage 1 attackers, is Eevee and the Evolutions. This is what makes Vespiquen really strong, is that we can attack with Evolutions. We can have a fire. We can make Vespiquen fire type, lightning type, and also water type. So this is going to make Vespiquen strong against Mega Sceptile, against Mega Rayquaza, make it strong against fire types, which there's not a whole lot. I guess you might see Pyroar. Pyroar could be a potential menace. Matter of fact, I didn't even put that in this deck, but I have heard reports that Pyroar is coming back, especially with all the grass coming through. So I'll at least mention that in passing. So Evolutions help make Raichu and Vespiquen and Golurk, some of these stage 1s that came out. Doug Trio is another one that could be kind of a rogue deck that could be really strong with the Evolutions. So that's one of the grass types. And one other Raichu Vespiquen is one of the variants that I recommend. The other one is Vespiquen with Night March. And in fact, I'm going to do a deck list for you. And tomorrow on Thursday tournament, I'm going to run a tournament using Vespiquen Night March. I built this deck for my son, and I've got to tell you, it explodes. On turn one, you can go through 20, 25 cards. You can get Night Marchers and be hitting for, you know, anywhere from 120 to the 180 on turn one. Matter of fact, I try to finish the game out in like 6 turns, and most of the time, you know, that's how long it takes, because it's a powerhouse. You start off trying to use Pumpkaboo or Joltik, and then you can kind of end with Vespiquen. But the other thing to remember in that kind of deck is Night Marchers are very weak, and believe it or not, Vespiquen's 90 HP can actually be very good to take a hit, like a Miltank, a Powerful Friends that hits for 80. Won't knock out your Vespiquen, but it would knock out the Pumpkaboo or the Joltik. So seeing that, that's how you can take advantage of the Night March. So those are 2 variants that I see in Vespiquen decks. Now, they're very, very strong. But I have a feeling you're going to see this a lot. So I'm going to talk to you about a counter to it. It's one I really, to be honest with you, I'm scared of, because that's the one because since I'm playing a Raichu Vespiquen deck, it's the one that kind of concerns me the most. But before we get to that, let's talk more about grass. So we've got Vileplume, and there's a couple variants. Now, Vileplume is probably a lower tier than Vespiquen, and I just got to be honest with you, Vileplume doesn't play quite as well as I think everybody thought it would. That being said, I've heard people who came in like top 4 with Vileplume, very successful deck, and if you're playing, if you're deck testing at all, you have to account for Vileplume because it can shut off decks very, very quickly. Both my Raichu Vespiquen deck and my Vespiquen Night March deck are designed so that on turn 1 I'm going to just blow through my deck, so that if they don't get the item lock on turn 1, all I need is 1 turn, and it's consistent, 1 turn to get through my deck, and then if they want to item lock me after that, then I can supporter my way through the rest of the game. So, but that being said, if Vileplume gets a turn 1 lock, it can be very difficult for decks that are item based. So, that being said, if you are going to build a Vileplume deck, you need to build it so that it locks quickly. Alright, couple of variants. I showed one Vileplume with Miltank and Lugia. I called it Vile Milk with a Loogie in it. So that one was a good one, and I've heard a lot of success from that one. The other one is probably probably a tier 2 deck, and probably one of them that a lot of people are playing, and that is Giratina EX along with Vileplume. And I've showed you this deck. It plays well, but again, it needs to get the item lock off quickly. And then you also need to make sure that you get Giratina charged up fast, and hopefully you can get a Muscle Band. Now, with playing double Hydreigon, it helps Giratina to retreat, so you can take damage from other Pokemon and then retreat into a Hydreigon or into another Giratina. So it's still a pretty versatile deck if you have the Hydreigon in play to help you kind of move around. So that's a really solid deck. And you know, my dad asked me to show him how Giratina Vileplume worked. He was using Mega Rayquaza Dragon, and of course he couldn't use his Mega Rayquazas because of Giratina, and like an item locked on turn 1 and he was like, I hate that deck. So this deck can be very annoying, but it can also be very good. One thing you need to watch out for is some basic EXs can hit pretty hard, and they can out-hit Giratina, and even though they may not They may not have their items. If they can use their supporters to get just the energy they need, they can knock Giratina out before Giratina can knock them out. However, also another plus about Giratina is that it takes out special energies. So if you can get the Chaos Wheel going, the opponent can't have special energies, and that really wreaks havoc on a lot of decks. So anyway, that's another thought with Giratina. Alright, so moving right along, we've got one more grass type deck. And Giratina is really more of a dragon deck, but you know, it's a Vileplume variant. And that is Sceptile and Mega Sceptile, and both of these are really, you know, good cards. Mega Sceptile has Jagged Saber with 100, and then you can kind of use the Sceptile Will, as it's known, to keep healing damage. And with 220 HP, I mean, he's a stout guy, so he's going to take a hit, and then you can retreat. Jagged Saber with another Mega Sceptile, heal this one, and you can just keep doing that over and over. The only reason I have my doubts with Mega Sceptile and why I move it down to a tier 3 deck is because with Flareon out now and the potential of Pyroar, but especially with Flareon, Mega Sceptile just can't stand up to the fire. I mean, it's real easy to one-shot. So with that being said, Mega Sceptile is probably going to move to the bench more, even though I really like the card. Alright, now, and this also being said, there's a lot of Megas here, like Primal Kyogre's kind of moved to the back. Primal Groudon, you might still see that, but Vespiquen and Sceptile both can really kill Primal Groudon. Toad is not here. You might see Toad variants, and I probably should put Toad in here because he can team up with somebody, but for the most part, because Vespiquen's gotten so big, the counter to Vespiquen has been Mega Manectric. Alright? Manectric and Mega Manectric. Now, Mega Manectric specifically, though, and here's the reason why. And this is the one deck that kind of concerns me against Raichu Vespiquen. If they can get their Mega Manectrics out quickly, and typically most people can have one Mega Manectric out turn 2, and charged up, hitting with the Turbo Bolt for 110. If they can get them charged up, I can't one-shot Mega Manectric with Raichu, and it's very hard to one-shot Mega Manectric with Vespiquen. I mean, maybe at the very end of the game, if I have a really big discarded amount of Pokemon, it's possible. And it's actually more possible with the Night March variant, which is designed to put a lot of Pokemon in the discard pile, because Night Marchers can hit that 210 mark, and Vespiquen at the end of a Night March deck can too. But in the Raichu variant, it doesn't hit as hard. And so Manectric just one-shots Raichu, one-shots your Night Marchers, one-shots Vespiquen, and then even if you do get a good hit off, like let's say we can Circle Circuit for 180, they just retreat into another Manectric and start Rough Seas, using Rough Seas to heal off the damage. And you either have to Lysander it up or figure a way around it. Now there's a couple strategies to beating Manectric if you're using Raichu or Vespiquen. Obviously you can target down Shamans, which are going to get you 2 prizes. The other thing is to try to hit Manectric EX, because it's only 170 before it Mega Evolves. And it is possible to do that, especially if you go first, or if you have a Wally. It's possible. It's not as probable, but it is possible. So that's one of the ideas to kind of beat that. Now, Mega Manectric, though, is got 2 variants that I've seen, and there's probably more than this. One of them is with bats, and I should also mention Raichu has a variant where it uses bats too, and it can actually help you to knock out Megas with the extra bat damage. But Mega Manectric is using Bat, because Mega Manetric's only hitting for 110. It really needs some damage modifiers, and so Bats really kind of help get that damage in areas where they need it to kind of finish off Pokemon. So Manectric Bats is a big deal, and also Manectric Bats actually usually um, works better against other bat decks. So it's kind of like the king of the bats if you use bats with Manectric. The other variant, and this is one that's becoming very, very popular, is Mega Manectric with Regice. Now, Regice here has Resistance Blizzard. It hits for 70. Muscle Band him, he's hitting for 90. So he can two-shot most EXs. But during your opponent's next turn, you prevent all the effects of the attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon by Pokemon EXs. So the idea here is if Mega Manetric's going against non-EXs, then you use Mega Manectric and just one-shot him, knock him out. But if he is going against big EXs that can hit hard back, you use Regice, and then they can't hurt Regice. So that is the idea here. So you either use one or the other depending on the circumstance, and it makes it very difficult for the opponent to have an answer for every situation. Now, another variant which is very similar to Regice is Beautifly. And I know a friend who has done extremely well playing Mega Manectric and Beautifly. And again, Beautifly is there so he can prevent all damage from other EXs, and then Manectric will come in and take out the little stuff. So it's a very good deck. It synergizes very well. But I think Regice actually plays better because you've got Rough Seas. So if Regice can take, even if Regice can take a hit, I mean, it's probably going to get one hit knocked out. But if it doesn't, Regice can, you can take Regice, put him to the bench, bring up Manectric, and then you can Turbo Bolt the energy right back onto Regice, and then heal the damage off using Rough Seas. So that water lightning combination just works really, really well. All right, so that's kind of our Manectric deck. I would say Manectric variants, Mega Manectric variants, are tier 1 right now in standard play. They're just going to be really, really strong. Okay. Now this kind of leads us to, with Manectric, it's kind of like every time something gets strong, something comes to counter it. So let's talk about some fighting decks, because right now I think fighting has kind of gotten, it hasn't been as big. But I want to talk about a couple fighting decks that I really think will match up well against Mega Manectric and against Vespiquen, and maybe people aren't talking about them too much, and maybe you can sneak in with this rogue deck and beat them. Now, the first one I want to talk about is, and I've just got Mega Lucario here, guys, but it should be just Lucario. So Lucario Bats, instead of Lando Bats, Landorus is rotated. Lucario Bats can be kind of a substitute for Lando. Now, the one thing about Lucario, though, that I like so well is that it's got 3 attacks. So if you go first, you power up, you're having 2 energies, and so you're already hitting for the second attack on turn 2 when you can attack. But if you go second, you can still hit pretty hard. I mean, with Strong Energy, Muscle Band, and Fighting Stadium, I mean, you can still hit for, like, let's see, 90 with the right, with the right kind of situation. You can hit for 90 on turn 1 with Lucario EX. So Lucario Bats, I think, is going to be strong. You could see it come in with Machamp, and I'll go ahead and put, kind of put this in. I don't know that you'd see a Machamp Bats, but you might see Machamp kind of be like an extra attacker with Lucario. The only problem is they're both weak to Psychic, so that could cause some trouble for them. I do think now. I think Machamp has really been underestimated. I think he's one of those decks that can come in and surprise people, and I really think uh, we need to take a closer look at Machamp. Okay, now I know you have to use Ariados and get that set up for Crazy Hammer to work, but think about this, guys. Crazy Hammer hits for 160, Muscle Band's 180, Fighting Energy's 200, Strong Energy's 200, and then Fighting Stadium's 220. And if you happen to need it, you could put another Strong Energy and hit 240, and you're knocking out Megas with Machamp, alright, who is a non-Mega. Furthermore, Focus Sash, instead of the Muscle Band, you don't hit as hard, but now they can't one-shot you, and then you can come back and Steaming Mad them and knock anything out. So with Machamp, I feel like you can get a 2-for-1 special. With you can trade two EXs for one with Machamp. Now I know most people still aren't going to be convinced, but I really think Machamp at least could be an extra in a Lucario deck. While Lucario is fighting the good fight at the beginning, maybe Machamp could come in and clean up. Alright, so that's one of my ideas. And again, Mega Manectric is weak to fighting. Now they are using, a lot of these lightning decks now are using the Flash Energy, but I feel like with fighting decks, they have so much room in them that you can use enhanced hammers. You could run maybe even 2, 3, or if you really want to get aggressive, 4 enhanced hammers, and maybe even head ringers. So that's just some thoughts. Now the rogue deck that I really think could make a splash, I think Metacham. This was the very first deck I started with when I was playing in States, and yes, it was very underwhelming. I did not do very good, and I didn't have a lot of cards at the time, and I learned a lot. It was a big learning experience. And then it kind of moved, it was a nice semi-competitive budget deck that I used. And then now, it kind of got moved to the side as I got more and more cards. And now it's coming back. And the reason why it's coming back is it really matches up well against all the other things, okay? First of all, Focus Sash is going to become a really big card with Metacham. Metacham has Yoga Kick, which only does 30 damage, and I know you're thinking, big whoop, 30 damage. It's not affected by weakness or resistance, so that means you can't hit Manectric for weakness. So, like, right now you're like, well, why are we using this guy? Alright, well, first of all, Metacham has a pre-evolution called Metatite. Metatite has an attack called Smack. For 1 energy, it does 20 damage. So with a Shrine of Memories, you can use Smack, and you can actually hit for weakness with it instead of Yoga Kick. So if you have a strong energy, now you're smacking for 40. Add a Muscle Band, now you're smacking for 60. Alright? Now here's the thing, though. If Metacham has Omega Barrage, gets to do 2 attacks per turn. Alright? So if you have Muscle Band, Strong Energy on Metacham, alright, and you have a Shrine of Memories in play, you can smack Mega Manectric for 120 because it hits 60 times 2 for weakness, and then you can do it again for another 120, and for 1 energy, a Muscle Band, 1 energy and a Muscle Band, you can knock out Mega Manectric in, technically it's not one shot, but in 1 turn because of the Omega Barrage. Pretty nice, right? Alright, but we can also even up the attack even more by using Machamp, the Stage 2 version. Now, instead of running like the evolutions, we just run the basic and the Stage 2. We use Karina to grab the stage 2 and use Karina to grab a rare candy, and boom, Machamp is in play, and Machamp does 20. All your fighting type Pokemon do 20 more damage. So now think about this. So we've got a Shrine of Memories in play, or even, let's say we don't have a Shrine of Memories. Let's say instead of a Muscle Band we have a Fist Sash, we have a Machamp, and we have a Fighting Stadium. So it does 30, with Machamp does 50, with a Fighting Stadium does 70, hits for 240, for 140, because you're going to hit twice. But if you can get either another Machamp in play or you play a Muscle Band, now you're hitting 30, 50, 70, 90, and you get to do that twice. Well, guess what? Vespiquen's HP is 90. You can knock out 2 Vespiquens in one turn. So I think Medicham really you need to take a hard look at possibly playing Medicham. It matches up very well against the other attackers. Alright, that being said, I'm going to just spend a little bit more time. I know we're at 30 minutes already, but I just feel like this stuff is very important. But the last few decks I'm just going to kind of breeze through a little bit faster. Tier 1 still is Mega Rayquaza. However, there is a lot of lightning out there now, so Mega Rayquaza can get one-shot by Raichu, by Joltik, by Eevee Evolution, Jolteon. So now Vespiquen can hit for weakness, so that makes Mega Rayquaza kind of still a tough play. Of course, there's Swablu and Altaria, but now with Hex Maniac in play, you can shut off the Swablu and the Altaria's ability and hit Mega Rayquaza right where it hurts. Furthermore, even if you don't, so now Lysander and Hex Maniac both work very well against Mega Rayquaza, because Lysander, you can just grab a Shaman and take it out. So with that being said, Mega Rayquaza is, I still feel, I mean, it's still an excellent play. It's still one of the, probably a top tier deck. Probably the best variant is still with Metal though. So Metal Rayquaza is probably still the best, using Aegislash EX, and also now Dialga EX with its Chrono Wind can really help you against you know, like Mega Manectric and other EX decks. So Aegislash and Dialga, and then of course I put little Bronzong in here just because Metal Lynx is really the reason why we play Metal Rayquaza, so that we can power up another Rayquaza on the bench without having to need 2 energy attachments. You know, a lot of times we have to either have a double colorless and we have to Mega Turbo the other energy on. But with Bronzong, you don't have to play the Mega Turbos at all, really. You might still play a couple, but with Bronzong, you can just Metal Lynx to a Mega Rayquaza on the bench, add a double colorless, and now you're ready to start attacking right away. So Metal Rayquaza, I think, is going to be strong, and that's really, I hate to say it, but that's the Metal deck that I see. I don't really see any other Metal variants right now that are going to do super well. Mega Aggron just never really took off. Okay, so that's what I see for Metal. I know, guys, I've got to tell you, Mega Tyranitar, I'm not convinced he's all that. I find him to be very, very clunky, and I'll tell you why. But I'm at least going to put him in the conversation just because he's, you know, he hits so hard. I would put him at tier 3 though. To be honest with you, I would rather run Groudon than Mega Tyranitar. That's my opinion. If you disagree with me, that's okay. Tell me, you know, give me your reasons why you support it in the comments below. I'll be glad to listen. I'll be glad to debate you about it. Friendly debate. I don't, you know, if you like Mega Tyranitar, then by all means play Mega Tyranitar. But let me tell you the cons of why I don't like Mega Tyranitar and why I think that it really is probably going to be reserved to tier 3 at best. Okay, so there's 3 things that you have to be concerned with Mega Tyranitar. Number 1, 4 energies. Now, you can use DCE, you can use Eviltal to kind of help charge him up, but you're looking at, even if you can get a Mega Turbo, you're still looking at 2 energy attachments, and that's best case scenario. It's just more likely that you're either going to have to waste resources to get those energy attachments, or you're going to have to wait a long time to get them. You're going to end up sycamoring because Shauna just isn't going to be able to bring you all the stuff that you need to make this deck work. Number 2, before Destroyer King can be very powerful, you have to have a way to get damage counters on the board to begin with. There's 3 ways you can do this. You can use Eviltal, the baby Eviltal, and then use Absol to kind of move the damage counters to wherever you need them, which is actually the variant that I prefer because it has the fewest moving pieces. You can use Bats, but when you put the bat line in, you're going to take up space for other stuff. Or you can use Fortress. Now, Fortress is probably the least, it doesn't take up a lot of space, but the problem is it can't zone in on what you actually need it to hit in the early game. So you might use your Fortress right off the bat and you'll put a couple damage counters on, but then they bench 4 more Pokemon that have no damage counters on them. Then you got to have another Fortress ready, and he only does 1 damage counter, so if you're going against a Mega, Destroyer King would not knock that Mega out. So anyway, that's the second problem. You got to have a way to get the damage counters. The third problem, his Theta Double is a blessing and a cursing at the same time. With Headringer going out, if you have a, let's say you get the Spirit Link on him, and then you evolve to him, and then you forget, or you don't have anything else to put on him, like a Hard Charm, or Lucky Helmet, or EXP Share. If you don't have those things to put on him, they can Headringer him, and now guess what? Now it takes 5 energies to use him. At that, and if you've already used resources getting this one together, you don't want to have to actually go start charging up another one. So it just can be a really bad situation. And those 3 things combined, just having to have all those resources, making sure you have enough tools in the deck, making sure you have a way to get damage counters, and making sure you have a way to charge him up, just makes Mega Tyranitar too clunky. And he's just not fast enough to deal with all the other fast-hitting Pokemon that come into the game. That being said, Destroyer King really does hit hard. 2 damage counters, and you're knocking out in just about anything except maybe a Wailord with a Hard Charm. 3 damage counters, and you're taking out everything. And so for that reason, we're at least considering him in a tier 3 deck. Alright, and then this final one is Mega Gardevoir. And guys, I know nobody's talking about Mega Gardevoir anymore. When Mega Gardevoir came out in Primal Clash, it was a big thing. And I've got to just tell you, you may think I'm biased because I really do love fairies. I really love them. But they haven't got a lot of love in the last couple sets. And that's why I think they make a great sleeper here, okay? Alright, first of all, regular Gardevoir can take out Giratina one shot. So you don't have to worry about Giratina or Dragon types, okay? Not that you're going to see a lot. Alright, you only need 7 energies in play to knock out Mega Manectric. Lucario EX, Machamp EX, you only need 6 energies in play to knock them out. Mega Rayquaza Colorless, you need 8, I think, to knock him out. but it's not that hard to get into play when you have Xerneas to help you, or you can even do a variant with Togekiss. I've done both, and they both have their pros and cons. The other thing I want you to consider, though, is the Whimsicott tech, especially against the Mega Manectric matchup. So if Mega Manectric hits you for 110, you can bring Whimsicott in, and you take that 110 damage and put it right back on him. You might lose the Whimsicott, but now your Mega Gardevoir has got full health again and can take another attack and finish off the Mega Manectric's pretty easy. So I think it matches up. I think Mega Gardevoir matches up well against everything. So that being said, I think because right now fairies have kind of lost interest, there's not really a lot of metal decks, but you could even play a fire tech like Charizard if you wanted to, put some rainbow energy in there just to protect you against you know, metal types. Then by all means do that. But I think Mega Gardevoir might be one of these that can sneak in and do very well now, simply because nobody's expecting fairies. Anyway, that's my thought. I've gone 40 minutes on this, guys. This is just my thoughts and ideas. I think these are the decks that you're going to, until we next set, which is going to be Breakthrough, I think these are going to be the decks that you need to focus on for Standard, which would be just mainly League challenges. Of course, things will change when Breakthrough comes and we go into cities. But right now, here are the decks. So enjoy and be mindful. If there's anything I can tell you on this Wednesday Words, be mindful of the other decks that are out there, the ones that are in the top 3 tiers here, and think and already plan ahead how you're going to handle, how your deck is going to work against that a particular deck when you see it. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful. I know it ran long, but I just think it's really important to share this with you. So hit like, subscribe, and we will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.